What's up, guys and gals of the movement world? It's Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi, coming to you once again on behalf of Football Beyond the Stats and another movement skill short story this week for week 6 of the 2025 NFL season. And today we're going to look at a scrambling play coming out of the pocket from Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield has obviously been playing at an exceptionally high level, the best football of his life, potential MVP candidate right now through 6 games, maybe the MVP favorite if we want to really look at it for what it is and how good the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been playing. So let's look at this play against the San Francisco 49ers. You got two 4-1 teams deep in the third quarter, close game in Tampa, and let's see what Baker had cooking, obviously, here on Sunday. And we know that it's going to be him feeling himself as he has been through these first 6 games of the NFL season. So 100% speed a couple times through here, as we always do. And then I want to talk about how we might be able to set up a similar slice or snippet of this game, both with the physical demand as well as with the elusive, evasive agility demand on the back end of it as well. NFL featured 2 plays here, this play and then going into sequencing right into a touchdown pass to Tej Johnson. But this is a play that I really want to look at because it's these types of plays that get Baker in his feelings in a good way, as well as the rest of his unit around him, the Tampa Bay Buccaneer offensive unit. So, a couple things here as we look at it start, and Baker sitting deep into the pocket, but that pocket collapsing and collapsing quickly. That's actually where I want to pick up because this is something that for the quarterbacks or even running backs that could get pressed and pressured with quick pressure up on their lap and have to deal with getting out of said physical demand in their own unique, authentic, and respective way. Or if we're looking on the flip side of that problem with defensive ends, edge rushers, linebackers, and the like, I will set up similar alive movement problems like this, where the quarterback in this case has to hold the ball for at least 3 seconds before he could attempt to pass. That will allow some of this pressure to actually get up in his face and him have to deal with that, right? Obviously, Baker's looking to, but he's looking through to where, in because he's got to obviously work through his reads, right? To where he might want to go with the football. So he's quickly scanning, working through his reads in this situation, where I will typically try to have what would be 1v1 interactions at the offensive and defensive line. Maybe it would be this guy and this one. Maybe it would be over here, these two individuals. It could be any number. I would love to have this to be this interaction and this interaction potentially, or this interaction here. So we'd have a 2v2 in front of the ball carrier, but at least a 1v1 to where there is going to be the chaotic problem to solve really quickly for the ball carrier, in this case, Baker Mayfield, in this case, the quarterback. And then in a perfect world, we would have another movement problem set up down the field with a wide receiver in a corner, or a wide receiver, defensive back, wide receiver, tight end, like type of player, maybe a running back against a linebacker. So an offensive skill player attempting to get open, a defensive player covering him, and you have these layers for this guy to work through and to solve in his own unique and an effective fashion, right? And so this is something that I think we can rep out. We can give him the opportunity to run or pass in this situation, but he would have to hold the ball once the problem begins for usually about 3 seconds. And I'll just count down 3, 2, 1, and then he can make a decision. And at that time, the pressure likely will have gotten to him and up in his face, right? So it's likely that he may not be able to find a way to throw the football in this situation, and he has to deal with some level of evasive agility demand, maybe in this case, trying to solve it with a strength or power strategy or solution. where these guys get up in his grill and they actually get their hands on him. We could also begin this, so that's one way to start this, right? And then he has to escape not only that pressure, but a player having him in the grasp. Or we could already start it with a player having him in the grasp. So usually a one player here, so that would be either number 47 or this guy, I can't see what number he is. One of those players already having the quarterback in the grasp. So that's a 1v1 there, quarterback and defender, but he's already at his waist. He maybe has his arm wrapped around his arms wrapped around his arms and or shoulders. And again, remember here, guys and gals, it's being done in a sparring type of fashion, right? So we're not actually probably trying to take that guy to the ground, but we're trying to make him work through some resistance in a physical way. We talk a lot about that. You know, my cheap plug, Enhancing Skill in American Football by myself, Tyler Yearby, Rob Gray, just released last month in September. If you haven't gotten it yet, pick it up. We talk a lot about having this blocking or tackling type of physical engagement that starts the slice. This would be a perfect situation for it, right? And then he has to deal with that type of demand. And that was something I started to implement back in 2017, 2018, when I did have a starting NFL quarterback who was returning back from a knee injury at that time. Actually, so happens to be on this respective roster in Teddy Bridgewater, Baker Mayfield's backup. And then it's out of the gates if he can get out of it, because we want this to be resistive. We want this to be a sparring engagement, right? He's got to deal with that. The quarterback has to deal with that. An easy way for us to rep that out in a repetition without repetition fashion. Now we let Baker get out in the open field. He can still look to pass. He can still look to run. We give him a line to gain. In this case, it's 14 yards, right? We can shorten that up if we want to. We can have a different alive defender, maybe potentially coming as a chaser if we'd want to add that. We could have this guy coming as a chaser, or we could have a guy coming straight from behind and entering the workspace as a chaser. We could have a guy, maybe if this is that's where the line of scrimmage is. I could have a guy roaming at the line of scrimmage. I could have a guy entering from the line to gain, whether that's at 10 yards, whether that's at 14. In this case, usually I'm probably talking in tens, right? But we want repetition without repetition there. And I want that player being Baker in this case, to have to deal with these layers of movement problem. Then when he gets in the open field, let him play, let him explore, let him create as Baker is here. He's playing around with the ball, trying to see if he can get guys to react. He's got a receiver out here at the boundary that he could dump it off to. But look at him, look at this guy actually use it in a deceptive fashion. Use him in a deceptive fashion. Stare him down. Pull a defender to him and get these guys to pause. Okay. Now here's where I'm talking about 1v1, usually 1v2, something of that nature. This dude entering the space, maybe this dude coming, or maybe even a guy coming and mirroring Baker in one way, shape, or form, moving from right to left. And of course, we do this on the left side, we do this on the right side. We'd have guys coming from both directions. That's how we incorporate problem variability here in this situation. Okay. And again, that slice, if I could draw it out, would probably be, if Baker's, if we're going to talk line of scrimmage, 10 to 15-ish yards long, depending on what we want to do there, and usually hashes to sideline. Okay. Maybe numbers to sideline, but usually near hash to sideline is what we would do there. Okay. I apologize. My dog thinks it's time to go out. It is not. Not right now, anyway. Not yet. We got a movement skill short story to continue to record here. So as he gets in space now we let him evade and take in the information about that alive movement problem. Remember, repetition without repetition. No two problems the same. Therefore, neither are two solutions ever going to be the same. Repeating the process of solving. What one is perceiving, What information is out there about that? What is? What are they cognizing? What are their intentions, their aims to act in a given way, the decisions they make, their knowledge of and about the situation, and ultimately how they attempt to adapt. And Baker does this really, really well in the open field. Okay. Fleet of foot, but he does it through deceptiveness more often than not. Even that little crossover from right to left, he does that by drawing that immediate defender. First, he freezes him, and then he freezes him again. You can see that little pause. Don't miss the force through the trees. It's like a finger pointing away to the moon. See it now for all its heavenly glory. There it is. Okay. Look at that pause that he has, and he puts that guy in his poster 2 times. Now, that which what unfolds at the end of this, after he has this sidestep, we could rep this out. But in our learning environment, typically in the spring or summer, guys aren't being brought to the ground in this fashion. And in your practice and learning environment, guys probably aren't likely being brought to the ground either necessarily. Now, maybe they could, maybe they should. One could argue that, right? And I would argue for that in certain times and in certain contexts, certain niches, right? But in our learning environment, these engagements, let's say it's now highly complex problem. Again, I talked a lot about 1v1, 2v2, 2v3, 3v3, right? That's usually about the amount of guys that I have out on the field. But we could have, if we have more than enough to add complexity, okay? I would love to be able to have that, okay? Additional players are a luxury. They're a benefit, not a curse for a constraints-led approach. Okay. I would love to be able to have what would be a 2v4 situation here. We see Baker, that's one, his teammate, that's two. A 2v4, 1, 2, 3, 4. In this tight space, in this traffic, let him learn to adapt and navigate through it even when chaos gets at its highest. And again, no two problems will really be the same here if we let this play out in that way. Now, again, I don't necessarily want my starting quarterback being tackled at this time, right? In practice, I'm talking. Obviously, it will happen in competition or in the game. But here's where I would set up this highly alive movement problem very, very often. 10 yards. We do this, I won't say daily, but probably 2 to 3 times a week for us. 10-yard tunnel by about a 5 or 6 yard width, maybe a little wider. Okay. But we do it really frequently, usually 2v2 type of scenario, maybe a 1v2, a 1v3, or a 2v3 in this exact way, and let that ball carrier try to find a way through without being tagged. So he has to get highly elusive here. He has to get highly creative. He has to become highly adaptable to get to the line of the game, just as Baker Mayfield is, and Baker himself is feeling it. So hopefully that makes some sense. If you like this movement skill short story or any of this movement skill short story segments, give me a thumbs up, hit like, subscribe, send it to your people. You guys know the deal. So from myself, I'm Sean Mishka, the Movement Miyagi from Football Beyond the Stats. I will talk to you all next time.